Influence. Coffee. Wait a minute. This was a mistake. Should have done this before. Oh well. Talking about commitment and consistency. Hobgoblins of the mind. Leonardo da Vinci says it is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. I wonder what this is going to be about. A study done by a pair of Canadian psychologists uncovered something fascinating about people at the racetrack. Just after placing a bet, they are much more confident of their horse's chances of winning than they are immediately before laying down that bet. Of course, nothing about the horse's chances actually shifts. It's the same horse on the same track in the same field, but in the minds of those bettors, its prospects improve significantly once that ticket is purchased. Although a bit puzzling at first glance, the reason for the dramatic change has to do with the common weapon of social influence. Like the other weapons of influence, this one lies deep within us, directing our actions with quiet power. It is quite simply our nearly obsessive desire to be consistent with what we have already done. Once we have made a choice or taken a stand, we will encounter personal and interpersonal pressures to behave consistently with that commitment. Those pressures will cause us to respond in ways that justify our earlier decisions. Basically, once you say something, you have the instinct to want to stay strong with your conviction that you made. Stay consistent, right? And appear to be consistent, reliable. Let's move this more this way, so that's more. Take the bettors in the racetrack experiment. 30 seconds before putting down their money, they had been tentative and uncertain. 30 seconds after the deed, they were significantly more optimistic and self-assured. The act of making a final decision, in this case of buying a ticket, had been the critical factor. Once a stand had been taken, the need for consistency pressured these people to bring what they felt and believed into line with what they had already done. They simply convinced themselves that they had made the right choice and, no doubt, felt better about it all. Before we see such self-delusion as unique to racetrack habitues, habitua. Habitue. A resident of or frequent visitor to a particular place, rather. His uncle was a habitue of the French theater. Habitue. I learned something new today. As unique to racetrack habitues, we should examine the story of my neighbor Sarah and her live-in boyfriend, Tim. They met at a hospital where he worked as an x-ray technician and she as a nutritionist. They dated for a while, even after Tim lost his job, and eventually they moved in together. Things were never perfect for Sarah. She wanted Tim to marry her and to stop his heavy drinking. Tim resisted both ideas. After an especially difficult period of conflict, Sarah broke off the relationship and Tim moved out. At the same time, an old boyfriend of Sarah's returned to town after years away and called her. They started seeing each other socially and quickly became serious enough to plan a wedding. Oh my God. They had gone so far as to set a date and issue invitations when Tim called. He had repented and wanted to move back in. When Sarah told him her marriage plans, he begged her to change her mind. He wanted to be together with her as before. But Sarah refused, saying she didn't want to live like that again. Tim even offered to marry her, but she still said she preferred the other boyfriend. Finally, Tim volunteered to quit drinking if she would only relent. Feeling that under those conditions Tim had the edge, Sarah decided to break her engagement, cancel the wedding, retract the invitations, and let Tim move back in with her. Within a month, Tim informed Sarah that he didn't think he needed to stop his drinking at all. A month later, he had decided that they should wait and see before getting married. 2 years have since passed. Tim and Sarah continue to live together exactly as before. He still drinks, there are still no marriage plans, yet Sarah is more devoted to Tim than she ever was. She says that being forced to choose taught her that Tim really is number one in her heart. So, after choosing Tim over her other boyfriend, Sarah became happier with him even though the conditions under which she had made her choice had never been fulfilled. Obviously, horse race bettors are not alone in their willingness to believe in the correctness of a difficult choice once made. Indeed, we all fool ourselves from time to time in order to keep our thoughts and beliefs consistent with what we have already done or decided. Well, that's tragic. That's a bummer. Tim, Tim, these psychologists have long understood the power of the consistency principle to direct human action. Prominent theorists such as Leon Festinger, Fritz Heider, and Theodore Newcomb have viewed the desire for consistency as a central motivator of our behavior. But is this tendency to be consistent really strong enough to compel us to do what we ordinarily would not want to do? There is no question about it. The drive to be and look consistent constitutes a highly potent weapon of social influence, often causing us to act in ways that are clearly contrary to our own best interests. Take as proof what happened when psychologist Thomas Moriarty staged thefts on a New York City beach to see if onlookers would risk personal harm to halt the crime. In the study, a research accomplice would put a beach blanket down 5 feet from the blanket of a randomly chosen individual, the experimental subject. After a couple of minutes on the blanket spent relaxing and listening to music from a portable radio, the accomplice would stand up and leave the blanket to stroll down the beach. A few minutes later, a second researcher pretending to be a thief would approach, grab the radio, and try to hurry away with it. As you might guess, under normal conditions, subjects were very reluctant to put themselves in harm's way by challenging the thief. Only 4 people did in the 20 times that the theft was staged. But when the same procedure was tried another 20 times with a slight twist, the results were drastically different. In these incidents, before taking his stroll, the accomplice would simply ask the subject to please watch my things, which each of them would agree to do. Now, propelled by the rule for consistency, 19 of the 20 subjects became virtual vigilantes, running after and stopping the thief, demanding an explanation, and often restraining the thief physically or snatching the radio away. Awesome. To understand why consistency is so powerful a motive, it is important to recognize that in most circumstances, consistency is valued and adaptive. Inconsistency is commonly thought to be an undesirable personality trait. The person whose beliefs, words, and deeds don't match may be seen as indecisive, confused, two-faced, or even mentally ill. On the other side, a high degree of consistency is normally associated with personal and intellectual strength. It is at the heart of logic, rationality, stability, and honesty. A quote attributed to the great British chemist Michael Faraday suggests the extent to which being consistent is approved, sometimes more than being right. When asked after a lecture if he meant to imply that a hated academic rival was always wrong, Faraday glowered at the questioner and replied, "He's not that consistent." Certainly then, good personal consistency is highly valued in our culture, and, well, it should be. It provides us with a reasonable and gainful orientation to the world. Most of the time, we will be better off if our approach to things is well laced with consistency. Without it, our lives would be difficult, erratic, and disjointed. But, because it is so typical in our best interests to be consistent, we easily fall into the habit of being automatically so, even in situations where it is not a sensible way to be. When it occurs unthinkingly, consistency can be disastrous. Nonetheless, even blind consistency has its attractions. Like most other forms of automatic responding, it offers a shortcut through the density of modern life. Once we have made up our minds about an issue, stubborn consistency allows us a very appealing luxury. We really don't have to think hard about the issue anymore. We don't have to sift through the blizzard of information we encounter every day to identify relevant facts. We don't have to expend the mental energy to weigh the pros and cons. We don't have to make any further tough decisions. Instead, all we have to do when confronted with the issue is to turn on our consistency tape, and we know just what to believe, say, or do. We need only believe, say, or do whatever is consistent with our earlier decision. Fascinating. The allure of such a luxury is not to be minimized. It allows us a convenient, relatively effortless, and efficient method for dealing with complex daily environments that make severe demands on our mental energies and capacities. It is not hard to understand, then, why automatic consistency is a difficult reaction to curb. It offers us a way to evade the rigors of continuing thought. And as Sir Joshua Reynolds noted, there is no expedient to which a man will not resort to avoid the real labor of thinking. With our consistency tapes operating, then, we can go about our business happily excused from the toil of having to think too much. Okay, so once you make a decision, subsequently, you only have to be consistent with the decision that you made. It makes it easier to not think too hard. It makes it easier to think about Other things, just release some brain power, right? Whatever decision you made, you're just going to stick with it. That's all you got to do. I have a feeling that what's going to happen here is they're going to say that if you can make somebody make a decision, they will feel obligated to be consistent with it. Now, if a decision is to help you, they'll be consistent with helping you and you'll get what you want. You just have to make them make the decision to help you somehow. There is a second, more perverse attraction of mechanical consistency as well. Sometimes it is not the effort of hard cognitive work that makes us shirk thoughtful activity, but the harsh consequences of that activity. Sometimes it is the cursedly clear and unwelcome set of answers provided by straight thinking that makes us mental slackers. There are certain disturbing things we simply would rather not realize. Because it is a pre-programmed and mindless method of responding, automatic consistency can supply a safe hiding place from those troubling realizations. Sealed within the fortress walls of rigid consistency, we can be impervious to the sieges of reason. One night at an introductory lecture given by the Transcendental Meditation Program, I'm sure it works. I witnessed a nice illustration of how people will hide inside the walls of consistency to protect themselves from the troublesome consequences of thought. The lecture itself was presided over by two earnest young men and was designed to recruit new members into the program. The program claimed it could teach a unique brand of meditation that would allow us to achieve all manner of desirable things, ranging from simple inner peace to the more spectacular abilities to fly and pass through walls at the program's advanced and more expensive stages. They solved the second part, the passing through walls, by making doors. I had decided to attend the meeting to observe the kind of compliance tactics used in recruitment lectures of this sort, and had brought along an interesting friend, a university professor whose areas of specialization were statistics and symbolic logic. It's kind of fascinating. As the meeting progressed and the lecturers explained the theory behind TM, I noticed my logician friend becoming increasingly restless, looking more and more pained and shifting about constantly in a seat he was finally unable to resist. When the leaders called for questions at the completion of the lecture, he raised his hand and gently but surely demolished the presentation we had just heard. In less than 2 minutes, he pointed out precisely where and why the lecturer's complex argument was contradictory, illogical, and unsupportable. The effect on the discussion leaders was devastating. After a confused silence, each attempted a weak reply, only to halt midway to confer with his partner and finally to admit that my colleague's points were good ones, requiring further study. More interesting to me, though, was the effect upon the rest of the audience. At the end of the question period, the two recruiters were faced with the crush of audience members submitting their $75 down payments for admission to the TM program. Nudging, shrugging, and chuckling to one another as they took in the payments, the recruiters betrayed signs of giddy bewilderment. After what appeared to have been an embarrassingly clear collapse of their presentation, the meeting had somehow turned into a great success, generating mystifyingly high levels of compliance from the audience. Although more than a bit puzzled, I chalked up the audience response to a failure to understand the logic of my colleagues' arguments. As it turned out, however, just the reverse was the case. Outside the lecture room after the meeting, we were approached by 3 members of the audience. Each of them had given a down payment immediately after the lecture. They wanted to know why we had come to the session. We explained and we asked the same question of them. One was an aspiring actor who wanted desperately to succeed at his craft and had come to the meeting to learn if TM would allow him to achieve the necessary self-control to master the art. The recruiters had assured him that it would. The second described herself as a severe insomniac who had hopes that TM would provide her with a way to relax and fall asleep easily at night. The third served as unofficial spokesman. He also had a sleep-related problem. He was failing college because there didn't seem to be enough time to study. He had come to the meeting to find out if TM could help by training him to need fewer hours of sleep each night. The additional time could then be used for study. It is interesting to note that the recruiters informed him as well as the insomniac that transcendental meditation techniques could solve their respective, though opposite, problems. Still thinking that the 3 must have signed up because they hadn't understood the points made by my logician friend, I began to question them about aspects of his argument. To my surprise, I found that they had understood his comments quite well, in fact, all too well. It was precisely the cogency of his argument that drove them to sign up for the program on the spot. The spokesman put it best. Well, I wasn't going to put any money tonight. I wasn't going to put down any money tonight because I'm really quite broke right now. I was going to wait until the next meeting, but when your buddy started talking, I knew I'd better give them my money now or I'd go home and start thinking about what he said and never sign up. All at once, things began to make sense. These were people with real problems, and they were somewhat desperately searching for a way to solve those problems. They were seekers who, if our discussion leaders were to be believed, had found a potential solution in TM. Driven by their needs, they very much wanted to believe that TM was their answer. Now, in the form of my colleague, intrudes the voice of reason, showing the theory underlying their newfound solution to be unsound. Panic! Something must be done at once before logic takes its toll and leaves them without hope again. Quickly, walls against reason are needed, and it doesn't matter that the fortress to be erected is a foolish one. Quick, a hiding place from thought. Here, take this money. Poof. Safe in the nick of time. No need to think about the issues any longer. The decision has been made, and from now on, the consistency tape can be played whenever necessary. TM? Certainly, I think it will help me. Certainly, I expect to continue. Certainly, I believe in TM. I already put my money down for it, didn't I? The comforts of mindless consistency. I'll just rest right here for a while. It's so much nicer than the worry and strain of that hard search. Wow. So they were panicked that the solution that was presented in front of them was a fraud. And instead of thinking too hard about why it was a fraud, they chose to put the money down, believe that it was going to work, and let their belief kind of carry them. And they didn't even need to, because they can just say, well, I made the decision, I'm just going to go through with it. Crazy things that people do. If, as it appears, automatic consistency functions as a shield against thought, it should not be surprising that such consistency can also be exploited by those who would prefer that we not think too much in response to their request for our compliance. For the exploiters, whose interest will be served by an unthinking mechanical reaction to their requests, our tendency for automatic consistency is a gold mine. So clever are they at arranging to have us play our consistency tapes when it profits them that we seldom realize that we have been taken. In fine jujitsu fashion, they structure their interactions with us so that our own need to be consistent will lead directly to their benefit. Certainly, large toy manufacturers use just such an approach to reduce the problem caused by seasonal buying patterns. Of course, the boom time for my toy sales occurs before and during the Christmas holiday season. The toy companies make fat profits during this period. The problem is that toy sales then go into a terrible slump for the next couple of months. Their customers have already spent the full amount in their toy budgets and are stiffly resistant to their children's pleas for more. Even those children whose birthdays fall soon after the holidays receive fewer toys because of the recent Christmas spree. So the toy manufacturers are faced with a dilemma: how to keep sales high during the peak season and, at the same time, retain a healthy demand for toys in the immediately following months. Their difficulty certainly doesn't lie in convincing our naturally insatiable offspring to want a continuous flow of new amusements. A series of flashy television commercials placed among the Saturday morning cartoon shows will produce the unusual amounts of begging, whining, and wheedling no matter when it appears during the day. No, the problem is not in motivating kids to want more toys after Christmas. The problem is in motivating post-holiday spent-out parents to reach down for the price of yet another plaything for their already toy-glutted children. Yikes. What could the toy companies possibly do to produce that unlikely behavior? Some have tried a greatly increased advertising campaign, others have reduced prices during the slack period, but neither of those standard sales devices has proved successful. Not only are both tactics costly, but both have also been ineffective in increasing sales to desired levels. Parents are simply not in a toy buying mood, and the influences of advertising or reduced expense are not enough to shake that stony resistance. Certain large toy manufacturers, however, think they have found a solution. It's an ingenious one involving no more than a normal advertising expense and an understanding of the powerful pull of the need for consistency. My first hint of how the toy company's strategy worked came after I fell for it and then, in true Patsy form, fell for it again. All right, let's find it. It was January, and I was in the town's largest toy store. After purchasing all too many gifts there for my son a month before, I had sworn not to enter that place for any like it for a long, long time. Yet there I was, not only in the diabolical place, but also in the process of buying my son another expensive toy. A big electric road race set. In front of the road race display, I happened to meet a former neighbor who was buying his son the same toy. The odd thing was that we almost never saw each other anymore. In fact, the last time was a year earlier in that same store where we were both buying our sons an expensive post-Christmas gift. That time, a robot that walked, talked, and laid waste. We laughed about our strange pattern of seeing each other only once a year at the same time in the same place while doing the same thing. Later that day, I mentioned the coincidence to a friend who, it turned out, had once worked in the toy business. No coincidence, he said knowingly. What do you mean, no coincidence? Look, he said. Look. Let me ask you a couple of questions about the road race set you bought this year. First, did you promise your son that he'd get one for Christmas? Well, yes, I did. Christopher had seen a bunch of ads for them on the Saturday morning cartoon shows and said that was what he wanted for Christmas. I saw a couple of the ads myself and it looked like fun, so I said, okay. Strike one, he announced. Now for my second question. When you went to buy one, did you find all the stores sold out? That's right, I did. The store said they'd ordered some but didn't know when they'd get any anymore. So I had to buy Christopher some other toys to make up for the road race set. But how did you know? Strike two, he said. Just let me ask you one more question. Didn't the same sort of thing happen the year before with the robot toy? Wait a minute, you're right. That's just what happened. This is incredible. How did you know? No psychic powers. I just happen to know how several of the big toy companies jack up their January and February sales. They start prior to Christmas with attractive TV ads for certain special toys. The kids, naturally, want what they see and extract Christmas promises for these items from their parents. Now here's where the genius of the company's plan comes in. They undersupply the stores with the toys they've gotten the parents to promise. Most parents find those things sold out and are forced to substitute other toys of equal value. The toy manufacturers, of course, make a point of supplying the stores with plenty of these substitutes. Then, after Christmas, the companies start running the ads again for the other special toys. That juices up the kids to want those toys more than ever. They go running to their parents whining, you promised, and the adults go trudging up to the store to live up dutifully to their words. Where, I said, beginning to see the now, they meet their other parents that they haven't seen for a year, falling for the same trick, right? Right. Where are you going? I'm going to take that road race set right back to the store. I was so angry I was nearly shouting. Wait, think for a minute first. Why did you buy it this morning? Because I didn't want to let Christopher down, and because I wanted to teach him that promises are to be lived up to. Well, has any of that changed? Look, if you take this toy away now, he won't understand why. He'll just know that his father broke a promise to him. Is that what you want? No, I said, sighing. I guess not. So, you're telling me that they doubled their profit on me for the past 2 years and I never even knew it? And now that I do, I'm still trapped by my own words? So, what you're telling me here is strike three. He nodded. And you're out. Sneaky.